Hello, welcome to Locked on Sharks, the premier hockey podcast of your favorite team in the Bay Area. And on today's episode, we have a old friend of the show, not that old friend, another old friend of the show coming back to talk about one of the Sharks' newest hires in Ryan Warsofsky. So we have Sarah Avampato on, who's been covering him for a while. He's going to talk about what the Sharks are getting with their new assistant coach and why he is going to one day usurp David Quinn and take his job. So all that and more on today's episode of Locked on Sharks.
You're Locked on Sharks, your daily podcast on the San Jose Sharks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I'm your host, JD Young, contributor at Fear the Fin and San Jose Hockey Now. I want to thank you, of course, for making us your first listen. We're free and available wherever you get podcasts. And on today's episode, we have one, Sarah Avampato, longtime friend of the show, back to talk about the Sharks, again, stealing her head coach of one of her favorite teams and the team that she covers, the Chicago Wolves. Sarah, first question before getting anything, did the thought of you covering Ryan for another season drive him away like it did Rocky Thompson? Yes or no?
Probably. He was probably very tired of me asking him questions like, why did they do that?
So, why are they doing things? No.
Why are they losing?
Why are they losing this team that just won the Calder Cup? So
right,
Sarah, who covered Locked on Kings, decided that she likes sleep apparently for some dumb reason.
Weird.
Is now going to be covering the Chicago Wolves full time over at for the SB Nation Canes website. And I think kind of dabble in some other things as well. Hopefully have some new projects or at least bringing back some newsletters because I enjoyed your newsletters. But Sarah, how are you doing?
Well, first of all, how dare you for taking a coach the second time in a row?
This is twice you've had to do this now.
Yeah, like I just feel like whoever the Wolves hire next, I'm just going to pencil in for an assistant role with the Sharks in like 2 or 3 years. But no, it doing good. The Wolves obviously won the Calder Cup this year, so it was a fun run to cover the team. And you know, I feel like we kind of went into the final being like, is this the last time that I'm going to talk to Ryan Warsofsky? And, you know, ended up the answer was yes. But it was a really great run for them. And I think a great way for him to end his tenure in the AHL.
Yeah, I mean, you know, for you, everything's coming up great, right? The Wolves went on the Calder Cup. The Kings are back. And then the Sharks are just going to be god awful this year. So you can't ask for anything better from at least from Sarah's angle. So.
You know, it works.
Yeah. If the Ducks, we'll see about the Ducks. I'm still a little, I think they're going to be much better this year, but we'll see. Gross. Just gross. All right. So let's get into, so of course the Sharks haven't officially announced, but it's basically all been announced, everything but announced that Warsofsky is going to be the new assistant coach for the Sharks. He's going to run the defense and he's going to run the penalty kill. So let's start with what type of coach is Warsofsky? What are the Sharks getting from, what are they getting from him as a person and as a coach?
So I feel like, whenever people use the phrase like players coach, I feel like it has a little bit of at least to me, kind of like a bad connotation in a way, because sometimes I feel like when I hear the phrase players coach, I kind of think like meathead in a way. Like, it sort of has that connotation of like, yeah, like, I don't love it. Like, because I feel like a lot of times people say that and it turns out it's because the coach just doesn't really, they're not bought into analytics or they're not like really advancing the role any. They're just more old school, I guess, is what I'm looking for. And so I always hesitate to call Ryan Warsofsky a player's coach because of that, like, in my mind, I don't like it. But I think that is who he is in the sense of him being a guy who is looking out for his players and who wants to push them to be the best they can be. This team with the Wolves this year and last season was weird because it was the COVID year. So it was very hard to you're doing everything over Zoom. You don't really get to like build a rapport with them. But just over the past 2 seasons of covering him, just really seeing it's a team that everyone was very open about the fact that they have ambition. And you don't really see that a lot on teams, but he really encouraged every guy to set personal goals for themselves and to set goals, even if that goal is, I want to make the NHL or I want to score a goal this year, like to let them figure out what their path is. And he's even talked, that is something he encourages himself and his staff to do as well, of, everyone is here for a reason. We all want to get better at our jobs. We all want to move up. And it was probably the first team that I've covered where I feel like everyone was very frank about, what they want next out of their careers. And so I think that on a personal level, he really resonates with players. He's very young. So I think that also kind of helps that relationship. He's 34. So
oh my God, he's younger than me.
Yes, he's younger than me too. I hate it. Every second I hated it. I was like, oh no. But, I think that, him being a younger coach, I think he has a lot more to offer players because, he never played at this level, but I think that, just being someone who isn't too far removed from his own playing career and everything, and being kind of in that same age range of, he's a new dad and having pretty young kids and everything, they can all kind of relate to each other. So I think that when, beyond the X's and O's, beyond what he's going to bring on the ice, I think he's really a guy who people trust as a person. And I talked with him at the end of the season after the Wolves did their championship like rally thing, and just kind of talked with him about that coaching philosophy of his, because he, if you don't pay attention to the AHL, you may have missed that he got fined by the league during the playoffs because he very openly called the officiating a joke and went on like kind of a tirade after a game that the Wolves won. They still won the game, and he still went on, and like he wasn't wrong. He looked at us and he's like, I want you guys to all go back and rewatch that play, and you tell me how we ended up on the penalty kill. And the answer is that he's right. He was totally right.
Yeah.
But he knew what he was saying. He knew what he was doing, and so he got fined for the league. And I asked him about it. He even kind of made jokes about it in the championship rally and everything. And I asked him about it, and he basically was saying that, his players need to know that he has their back, and his players, he talked about like, we're all human at the end of the day. And these are all guys who sometimes are in tough situations, whether it's personal, whether it's their career, whatever. And he's like, sometimes I know that these guys haven't had that support throughout their career, whether, again, it's been hockey related stuff or off the ice stuff. And so he, talked about coaches that he's learned a lot from. He's worked a lot with Mike Vellucci, who I know was also up for the job with the Sharks. Spencer Carberry, Mike Sullivan are all guys who he's worked with throughout his career, and has just taken a lot from them about being a guy who your players know that you have their back. And so, we'll probably get into more of the on ice stuff in a little bit, but I think that the biggest thing I can tell Sharks fans is you're getting an actual good human being who is going to care about the players who are with him, and is going to want to push them to be the best that they can be, not to sound too much like a bad Army ad.
And Sarah perfectly setting us in the right time for the ad, because she's an expert at this now. So yes, veteran. So before we get into what Coach Warsofsky is going to bring on the ice and kind of how he's going to work with this blend of veteran defenders and the young defenders that are going to be coming up, let's take a quick break, talk to you guys about our friends over at BetOnline. You guys know BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to check all your betting needs. Find all your favorite sports and events and the #1 source for odds, lines, and games. Find reviews and news on every league, including Major League Baseball, NFL, NBA, NHL, combat sports, esports, and even golf. BetOnline continues to be the top online resource for your sports wagering information, from live in-game betting, scores, and podcasts that have you covered. So head to their website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the action happening today. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right. So first of all, great on the not too bad of a transition there, I thought. Anyway, no. So I think the big question for Sharks fans, right, is they have, you have your stalwarts, like you have your Erik Karlsson, you have Marc-Edouard Vlasic, who has been tumbling down the cliff the past couple of years. Erik Karlsson is kind of, I was talking with a friend of mine, he's kind of like an avocado where you have 7 minutes window where he's like perfectly amazing, but if you miss that window, it's either tough or it's a mushy mess, right?
That's
But
amazing.
if you hit that window with Erik Karlsson, you're like, this is the greatest thing I've ever had, right? And we've seen those flashes from Karlsson. Then you have Mario Farov, who is, somehow already a grizzled veteran. But, he's kind of hasn't really lived up to expectations since his rookie year. And then a bunch of young guys kind of starting to come through. So Warsofsky, I think a lot of times with AHL, especially with the Barracuda, where it's like, we think young guys, right? And especially with the Barracuda, where it's just been a bunch of young guys. But like you look at the Wolves roster and like, you have like Steven Nason, forever Shark Steven Nason. You had, you had a lot of guys who have played NHL games and kind of been older. So how does he work with, of course, really young guys and then with these veteran guys as well?
It really seemed like he and this group just gelled really well. And, I never felt like it was, young guys certainly got their chances to prove themselves. And, there were a couple of younger players who came over at the end of the season after their, seasons in Europe ended. And he just threw them right in there. And, within games, a couple of these young guys never played in North America before are playing on special teams. They're getting big minutes. So he hasn't been afraid to just let guys go out there, see what they have. I haven't, obviously any coach in tight situations is going to shorten their bench. You're not going to see a lot of your grinders in the last 5 minutes of a tight game. But, I didn't really see much of that, like, oh, you made a mistake and then you don't see the ice the rest of the game kind of thing. He definitely buys into the philosophy of the AHL as a developmental league. So they're not going to learn if they're sitting on the bench, not getting a chance to prove that they learned from their mistake. So, the NHL may be a little bit different, but, I think in terms of kind of navigating that younger player, older player spectrum, I think that he did really well at kind of playing to each guy's strengths. And so, he didn't tinker too much. Once lines worked, once defense pairings worked, that was it. They juggle things if things started to get a little stale or if one guy was cold, but they had the, enviable problem in the playoffs of having too many defensemen. The franchise, both Hurricanes and Wolves, had gone out and gotten a couple of kind of veteran guys to play on the blue line, and they ended up not playing at all because they liked the six that they had. Everyone did good, and he's like, I can't justify pulling one of these guys out just to put in someone because he's there, you know? And so I think that he definitely is a guy who will give young players the chance to step up and to show themselves and to show what they've got. And I think that he is pretty smart about knowing what his veteran strengths are and kind of putting them in situations that will play to that.
Yeah, I'm really interested to see how him and David Quinn work, because we've heard, everything about David Quinn, especially, in New York, where, a guy makes a mistake, and we saw Bob Bugner do this a bajillion times, especially where the young guy makes a mistake, and then, okay, cool, Ryan Merkley, I'll see you next game type of thing. So you're hopefully maybe he's in his ear a little bit and be like, hey, I know we made a mistake, but we got to get him back out there type of situation. Yeah. So, like being a defenseman, and I'm hoping too, especially with like, we saw David Quinn, what he did with Adam Fox, who is a very, very talented player, but like maybe some of that can rub off on Ryan Merkley. You get, Warsofsky, who's been a defenseman, been a head coach in the AHL type of thing, can help Ryan Merkley, who you kind of feel like this is a big year for Merkley, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and then of course, we talked about like, he's going to work with the defense and stuff like that, and the special teams. He's already kind of said like, we don't want to tinker with the special teams because that was too much, especially the penalty kill, because that was actually the one good thing the Sharks did last year. They were second in the league in the penalty kill somehow. So I assume that the system's going to be kind of the same. But what have we like with his penalty kill? Is he a like kind of grinder type of penalty kill? Is he like to put like actual real players out there to try to do something? Like, what do we kind of see usually from a Warsofsky penalty kill?
It somewhat depends on the game and the situation they're in. a little bit of a power kill in the sense
Ooh, love
of
it.
there were a lot of shorthanded chances, and so he would put real players out there. You'd
Yes.
see like Stefan Nason and Jack Drury out on the penalty kill, doing excellent jobs on the penalty kill, but then the puck gets sprung in the neutral zone, and then they're off to the races, and usually ended up scoring. So it's aggressive in the sense that they want the puck back. They don't care that they're missing a guy. And we saw that all year. And there were a few games, and he even kind of talked about this after the playoffs were done. Of there was a game earlier in the playoffs. I think they were playing. They played Milwaukee. It was a game against Milwaukee, and it was it was literally their first loss of the playoffs, and they allowed 3 power play goals in one game, which was like
That's
a wake up. That's real bad.
Yes.
They lost the game. It was basically 50% success. They had 6 penalty kills, 3 of them got scored on. It was bad. And they sat down, they looked at it, they changed it, and they were lights out basically the rest of the way. Their series against Springfield to end the playoffs, to win the cup, they allowed 3 goals total on the penalty kill over the course of 5 games. So he's very good at recognizing when something has gone wrong. And every so often you're like, you know what, that was terrible, but we just know we had an off night, and like you don't want to tinker with it then, because you're like, everyone has a crappy night. It happens in any league, any team, whatever. But they looked at it and they were like, no, we have to make adjustments. We have to adjust for, they have, guys like Rocco Grimaldi who just scored. Like, he looks at the puck on the power play and scores from the AHL. And they had to adjust for that. And yeah, like I said, we're great the rest of the way. So very smart in terms of realizing when something's not working and actually changing it, which I feel like you don't see all the time from coaches.
Yeah, that's that kind of all on the fly. And then, but I think it's also, like you said, that balance of like when to know, okay, do I need to tinker, or do I need to like, kind of let things kind of just let things simmer, and then it'll kind of figure itself out. So that's good to hear. Before we continue with Sarah on Rocky Warsofsky and kind of again what being the new assistant coach for the Sharks, just want to let you guys know, of course, about Locked On NHL. When you guys are done listening to this episode, make sure you guys go check out there. They're still pumping out shows 5 days a week, even though we at the rest of the NHL shows are down to 3. I know they're going to be starting their division by division power rankings soon, which is going to be fun. I expect the Sharks to be pretty far down on the Pacific. So, but yeah, when you guys are done listening to this, go check out the Locked On NHL show wherever you get podcasts, and of course, subscribe on YouTube. All right, Sarah. So, we talked about Warsofsky, and pretty much everybody was like, this is a really great hire. I mean, he actually, interviewed for the actual head coach of the Sharks, and was, of course, they chose David Quinn. And he seems like a guy who's going to be an NHL coach it's a matter of when at some point, not if, right?
Yeah. I think that it was very easy to tell even before they won the Calder Cup that he was definitely, rising star kind of guy, to the point where even last season we were like, all right, like, is he even going to be back next year? And I know Hurricanes fans are, justifiably like disappointed about this, because Hurricanes fans have their own issues with their assistant coaching staff, and everyone always looks at special teams and is like, what if we tinker with our coaches and maybe special teams will be good again? And so a lot of Hurricanes fans were like, they couldn't have found a way to keep him. They couldn't have found a way to make room for him on the bench up there somewhere. But I think credit to the organization of realizing that he had an opportunity here that he wasn't going to get necessarily with the Hurricanes, and to let him move along. But yeah, I think that I think it's going to be exciting. And for you guys who are watching David Quinn and being like, I don't know, you have a guy who I think has the potential to be a future NHL head coach, and gets to be ready to make that jump someday.
Well, to be fair to Canes fans, they also did get Brent Burns. So I think this was like the long con trade here, where it's like, yeah, you guys are going to get Brent Burns. It's not going to be too great of a trade package back, but we're getting Ryan Warsofsky, and it's kind of an under the table thing, right? At least that's how I'm taking it.
Totally, this is like the equivalent of like future considerations of we'll give you a coach later.
We'll give you a coach later. So, all right, before we get you out of here, I know you're still covering the Kings and stuff.
Yeah.
I kind of want to get your thoughts. The Kings off season, just what are your quick thoughts on it?
I was very excited about the Kevin Fiala trade. I thought that was
a steal. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it was very much a steal. It was, a player. The player that went the other way is a guy who I think everyone has high hopes for as a defenseman. But at the end,
but you guys draft like 1,000 different.
Right.
You have Brant Clark just sitting there waiting. So.
Yeah, just hanging. So it was unfortunate, but he's expendable in a way. They have so many defensemen. You can give one up, and of course, Minnesota's going to jump at the chance to bring home a Minnesota boy in a trade. So I think that Kevin Fiala really fills a gap that the Kings had in terms of, needing someone to be that elite kind of scorer. And the idea of him on a line with Kopitar and Adrian Kempe is really fascinating. I'm hoping that the younger players can take the next step up and we can start to see a little bit more of what they can offer. But I'm hopeful. I saw one crazy person say like the Kings are going to win the division, and I'm like, well, that's very charming, but I don't think that's going to happen. There's still lots of other teams there that are good, but I think that everything's headed in the right direction, and with a healthy blue line, which they did not have for most of the season last year, they're not going to win the division. But I think that I'm not worried about, they're going to fall out of the playoff hunt or anything.
There's optimism down south, yes.
Yes, which is weird.
Weird feeling, I know. Right, I don't like it. Yeah, I mean, and then Quentin Byfield season, it's happening, right? It's coming. Yeah. Are we getting the Quentin Byfield? It's happening.
He has to, because otherwise I'm going to have to start fighting people who are like talking crap about him. Like,
I'm already on there with the William Eklund stuff. It's like, you're coming after my child,
right? Like, who I raised with my own two hands. Yeah.
Yes.
So, calm down, everyone.
Yes. Sarah, you've come and said it all. Dakota says hi as well. What do you have coming out next? Where can the people find you?
So as always, you can find me on Twitter at @RightSaidSarah. Always there, just talking about, whatever. Canes Country is at canescountry.com. Also there on Twitter, but I don't get to make witty tweets over there. So, but if you want to like do a deep dive into Ryan Warsofsky thoughts, you can find him there. I'll probably actually put like, I did have a nice conversation with him after they won the cup that I just never got around to posting. So keep an eye on my Twitter, because I might actually bother to just transcribe it and plunk it up there. But otherwise, yeah, who knows what's next? If anyone in the Chicago area is a Sharks fan and wants some guinea pigs, get at me, because I've got 2 of them that need homes.
Okay. Sarah, also DJing, giving out guinea pigs, writing about hockey. You're a modern day Renaissance woman.
That's I like it. I'm going to put that on my business cards.
I got you. So, of course, you can find the show on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram at Locked On Sharks. Dakota is being very obnoxious right now for some reason. And I'm constantly having to pet her right now or else she'll keep growling. But if you want pictures of Dakota, you can find her on there too as well. I use her as memes because she's very memeable. So you can also listen Apple, Spotify, Odyssey, wherever you get podcasts. If you're on Apple, please leave a 5-star review. Go ahead and also subscribe on YouTube as well. You'll probably see Dakota in this episode as well. She does make an appearance too. Find me on Twitter at myfryhole. Sarah is at Right Sarah Said, and we'll be back on Thursday night-ish, probably with something else. Yeah, it's the off season, guys. I'll have good stuff for you. I always have good stuff for you. So, bye, friends.